What's going on, everybody? Bugo back at it again. Today's video is going to be slightly different. It's going to be raw, unedited, no script, nothing, just off the cuff, which you can probably already tell. And the reason for today's video is actually inspired by an acquaintance of mine from university. Me and him graduated at the same exact time, but we took vastly different paths. He went to the Bay Area for big tech, and I went more so the consulting route and then into having my own business. And recently, I actually had the chance to catching up with him. He came over to where I live around in the LA area. We caught up, had some dinner, told each other what we were doing in the past few years, where we are now, where we want to be. And it was a very interesting conversation that I had, and I just wanted to make this video now, kind of talk about it. And really, as you can probably already tell by the title of this video, it's going to involve money, and more specifically, how to really become a millionaire or make your first $1 million as a software engineer as fast and, in my opinion, as efficiently as possible. What do I mean by that? By efficiently, I mean not necessarily how fast you make it, because you can just put it in any, as we see now with meme coins, right? You put it in Mother or something and it just instantly shoots up. But I'm more so talking about efficiency in terms of replicable. You can keep repeating it anytime you want, year over year. You have an actual system for creating that wealth. And in this case, we're going to dive into entrepreneurship and business. But before we get there, let me tell you more about the conversation. So me and him graduated at pretty much the same exact time. He went to the Bay Area with a very nice offer. I think he initially started out with like $150,000 of salary, plus he had stock options and equity and so many other things that he was getting. And I think nowadays he's making close to, if not more than, like about $400,000 a year. That's before taxes, obviously. But we were talking and he asked a very interesting question to me that I did not expect from him. He said, "Do you regret going to university? Do you regret getting the degree now that you know everything that you do know?" I'm like, well, in hindsight, obviously, right? Because every single decision we make, in hindsight, we could have made a better decision, to give and take some other variables, but pretty much most things in hindsight always look better. So I said, maybe that's not a fair way of judging things, because in hindsight, of course, you could have made a better decision, but for what it was worth, it was still, I would say, a much better decision than many other things that I could have done, many other paths that I could have taken. Of course, was it the best one? That's debatable, but nevertheless, I didn't consider it bad. And he said, just right off the bat, that he regretted it. And I said, why? Like, you're the last person I would expect this from. He was always the straight A student in university. He was the one that, oftentimes people say the 10x programmer. He was the one in programming groups that kind of just knew everything, carried the group, always did all the assignments, never failed any assignments, always knew how to do it, what to do, finished everything on time, just really, quote unquote, genius when it came to programming. He was just a natural at it, right? The logic and everything, he understood it very, very well. And hence why he actually got a very good offer in the Bay Area. And I said, how are you, of all people, regretting the decision you made? Because you're making very decent money for somebody in their 20s. You're still young. You have a lot of things, like a lot of years ahead of you, a future to make. But he said, well, look at yourself as an example. He was comparing him to myself because, we caught up after so many years. And I said, well, you can't really compare it to me because I don't work for somebody else. I have a business. And I've been in business for a while now. And you're just comparing it to me now. But if you take a look back at 2 or 3 years ago, or even 4 years ago, when we both started off, you had a much better starting point than me. You were pretty much over here, and I was starting from over here. I was coming up here, dropping, coming up here, dropping. And then now, after I knew pretty much everything that I know, is when I finally passed. So I'm like, you can't really make that comparison. But he said, no, by comparing to you, I meant I should have done what you have done, but much sooner as well. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I should have gotten into business. I should have gotten into entrepreneurship. And I said, what caused this? What caused this shift in your mindset? And he said something very interesting. He's like, he started breaking it down for me. He's like, look, I paid $3,000 for just rent, 1 bedroom in San Francisco, Bay Area. He has car payments, he has insurance, so on and so forth. Taxes take up almost 48% of his paycheck, about that range, he said. And then plus he has health insurance, he has 401k that he does, and so many other things. At the end of the day, he gets left with about close to under $20,000 a month. And he has other miscellaneous expenses and things like that. And I'm like, well, isn't that, that's still a pretty decent amount considering your regular salary is going to be about close to 40K a month, right? Taxes, take off everything, that's about what you would expect. It's like, yeah, but that 20K isn't accounting for any of the expenses. After all the expenses that I do, food and this and that, I'm left with under 10K pretty much consistently. And some months I'm left with under 5K. And I'm like, well, are you saving anything? Are you putting anything back? It's like, yeah, sure, I'm saving stuff. But nevertheless, I don't really see myself being able to escape this. I feel like I'm trapped. I'm like, why don't you just quit and do your own thing? It's like, if I quit, my expenses are pretty much going to just swallow me within a couple months. And I don't know, like, I don't feel confident in myself in actually making the leap and trusting myself for those couple months to actually make it through. And I'm like, so, well, what are you going to do now? Are you just going to, continue in your work? Or what are you thinking? He's like, well, I'm doing the work, and at the same time, I'm trying to do something on the side that hopefully can replace my income, and I can just switch on to that. And that was very interesting because I had a bunch of other people also who were software engineers, especially after videos that they reached out and they said, well, what should I do? Should I just quit the job now? How do I want to get rich? How can I get rich? I'm living paycheck to paycheck as a software engineer, especially because most of the high salaries are in states such as New York, California, where living expenses are through the roof. So if you're making, let's say, anywhere from anything under $150,000, you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck, just right off the bat. If you're making anything under 250, you're going to be living decently, and maybe you can afford a couple trips here and there, but still you're not to the point where you have quote unquote fuck you money or you have some sort of freedom, right? You're still very reliant on that job. If God forbid something happens and then you lose that job, you're pretty much toast. And that's the problem. That was the entire problem. More than anything, making those millions of dollars, sure, that's extremely nice. But the whole point behind having that money is being able to spend it comfortably, as well as knowing that there's nobody above you that's actually controlling your stream of income. You don't have a boss that if you offend, you're pretty much done. You're going to get fired. You don't have anybody like that that's pretty much in charge of your livelihood, right? In charge of the money that you're going to get and use to feed yourself and your family and so on and so forth. So we kind of had like an awkward silence for about like 1 or 2 minutes. I was digesting everything he was saying, and I was very shocked because, like I mentioned, he was pretty much like the only guy that I knew. He was in my classes, all the upper division classes, highest grades, acing all the projects. I always thought he's gonna go to like FANG, just get one of those quant trading degrees, like, I mean, jobs, make like a couple mil a year, this and that, he's gonna be fine. But he comes up and then this is him, and then he's saying that I'm in a better position than him now. I thought about it for a bit and I'm like, okay, my guess is a lot of other people are actually in worse situations than him because he's still relatively in a good situation considering how much he makes, right? He's like top 1% of software engineers, and there's so many other people that are probably feeling worse than him and they don't even know what to do. So this video is largely dedicated to those folks who feel like they're trapped in their 9-to-5, specifically for software engineering. They were promised a future that now they have begun to understand that, okay, maybe this is not for me. They signed up for something that they didn't think was going to be like this, right? Especially with the constant grind, the taxes, and after everything, you don't really get to see much of the paycheck, especially for the work that you do, because oftentimes in our space, you can literally directly see how much impact your work is having, how many millions of dollars you're actually bringing to the company, and the scraps that you're getting, right? For example, if you're bringing in about 5 to 10 million annually to your company, you're going to get no more than 100 to 200K, right? So let's do the math on that. But today's video. I want to emphasize how to make your first million, or just any amount of millions that you want, as fast as possible with you being a software engineer. And that's going to be going into entrepreneurship, more specifically starting a business. But the caveat here is that while most other folks will tell you that you as a software engineer have to get into tech or have to get into software or have to get into making an application, I'm here to tell you that that's necessarily not the case. And in fact, I would not recommend it for most of you. The only people I would recommend that really for are the folks that I was just talking about, that acquaintance of mine, who from day one was just talented in this. He understood it. He was extremely good at it, 4.0 GPA. He understood all the projects, all the homeworks. He went into FANG. Really, the 1%, the 10x programmers, quote unquote. That's who I would really recommend to get into tech and do something on the tech end of things. But the regular software engineer, I was the regular pretty much software engineer, I would recommend them to get into some other field and leverage their actual tech skills, especially their software engineering skills, in that other space. And let me tell you, that is far more lucrative than anything else you can do, especially as a software engineer, because people underestimate just how much knowledge software engineers really have. Not only are our skills extremely transferable, our critical thinking skills, as well as the logic that we developed, how we solve problems, our problem-solving skills, are extremely crucial in the business world. We have an overwhelming advantage. I have a few videos on that goes into it a bit more deeply, but for today's sake, I'm just gonna give you the raw, pretty much roadmap of what I did and what you can do. So I got into, when I was still working as a software engineer, I got into e-commerce because I had very good experience already with front-end and back-end development. So I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna get into anything, it has either to be an agency, like a web dev agency, service-based, or like e-commerce, something that has to do with a website. And sure, I had to learn the marketing, the copy, the sales, and all that thing, but really what I knew really well was web design, landing page optimization in terms of speed, in terms of copy, all that stuff. I knew that inside out. And it was evident after, testing and failing a few times, I got to the point where I was making close to $2,500 a day in revenue with about 60 to 80% margins matters on the day. But I was taking home about 16 to 1800 really, if you averaged it out at the very end, each day pretty much. And that was something that kind of opened my eyes because I was making way more money than I was at my job, and I was working way less hours, and I was having a lot more fun. I was learning a lot more. That's the most important thing too. I wasn't only learning as a programmer. I wasn't only learning as a software engineer. I was learning many other skills that will be like now that I can transfer onto other businesses, and even the business that I'm currently doing now, I'm using many of those skills that I learned from elsewhere. And that's, I really think, the bread and butter of why you should pursue entrepreneurship as a software engineer specifically. And why I'm here to tell you that you don't have to get into app creation, you don't have to get into software creation, you don't have to do those things specifically just because you are a quote-unquote software engineer. And don't feel like it's a waste that, oh man, I know coding, but isn't it going to be a waste if I go into some other business? No, it's not, because coding itself, you're viewing it as one skill, where in reality, coding is a plethora of other skills combined into one, right? It's about coding is really problem solving. It's how you see the world. It's how you see a specific problem. It's how you perceive that problem, and it's how you break it down. It's a combination of numerous aspects that form to be called this thing coding, right? So in essence, coding is really, I will say, a combination of many skills. And if you get into another business, you can actually see that developing in real time. Most of the actual tech folks that I know that got into businesses ended up becoming extremely successful after a few years. I don't know anybody that got into a business that's been pretty much like stuck or failing for more than 5 years. The longest that I know was an individual who took him about 5 years to actually, like stand up on his feet and start making more money than he was doing at his job. But nevertheless, I haven't met anybody that's actually truly failed as a software engineer, because like I said before, we have an overwhelming advantage. And it doesn't matter what business you really get into, right? In a sense of, actually, let me take that back. It does matter what business that you get into, because you have to think of your business as a vehicle to get to somewhere. If I want to go to the local grocery, I have no problem with walking. It would actually be more convenient to maybe walk than take my car and find a parking spot. But if I want to go down to the Costco 30 miles from me, then I can't really walk. I need to take a car. So in that sense, the business model is your vehicle, it's your car. It's what you're gonna use to get to where you want to be. If you are somebody who wants to make a few $1,000,000, maybe $1 to $3 million a year, and not have a team, not have a bunch of other people reliant on you, because that's just extra stress as well that you need to understand and you need to tolerate, then, there's some business models that you should avoid doing and others that you should focus more on, right? And you just have to see where you really fall, what you want out of your life, to kind of understand and hone down on a specific business model. But nevertheless, doesn't matter what you choose, you're still going to have to go with a business at the end of the day. It's literally the natural path as a software engineer. I mentioned it in my other videos too, but many of you might already be on this journey of you got into a job, you got a job, you've been there for 1 or 2 years, and you're maybe not liking where you are now, you're not growing as much as you wanted, maybe your bonus wasn't that great, maybe your pay increase wasn't that great, and you're already thinking of switching jobs, and then you realize like switching to a different job is literally going to not only give you a promotion, but also maybe another 20 or 30% pay increase. And so that's literally what ends up happening in software engineering. Every 2 or 3 years, you have somebody change from, company to company to company to company. And the nature of software engineering itself is pretty cutthroat. There's no loyalty in it. It's you hop from one company to another. It's pretty much all monetary, and who will give you the better deal, that's who you go to. But at the end of the day, there's going to come a point where you're finally fed up with everything, and you're already to a point where nobody can really quote unquote afford you. You've already grown to such a level where you're going to do your own thing. That's why you see most folks who don't end up retiring. Sometimes you'll see folks like, in their 50s and 60s working for one company for 40 years, 30 years, and then they end up retiring after that. But the folks that usually don't stick with one company and just keep switching companies back and forth, they end up down the line, maybe 15, 20 years later, founding their own company or joining somebody else as a partner, right? But that's for a very specific reason, especially those folks who continuously have a problem with just staying at one place and just keep jumping around for better pay, better position, and just are looking to climb up in status or climb up the corporate ladder. Those folks naturally are bound to one day end up becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner, because they're going to realize at the end of the day, okay, this is the best option for me. So why take the risk of spending all your youth and spending all those years going up the corporate ladder where you can just already go into the business right now and give it a try right now? Because as I mentioned before, we as software engineers have an overwhelming advantage, right? In the way we approach business, in the way we solve problems, in the way we already have an overwhelming advantage with the technology that we use. There's so many things we can automate. We're already familiar with all the tech we really need to use. Most of us even have some form of creative background in terms of using camera equipment or even editing stuff, right? So we have a wide variety of tools in our arsenal that we can use. And if I had to describe this another way, it's sort of like we have all the ingredients and all we really need is the courage to just do it. So that's why anybody who's watching video and that's maybe in the back of their mind had the inkling to, man, should I start a business? This is your sign to go ahead and do that, exactly what you want to do. Start a business, take the risk, just get into it, just jump into it. I'm not saying quit your job now and just Hail Mary it. If you want to, you can do that. If I went back in time, I would have done that right off the bat, just Hail Married it. Because I think I would have figured it out. But it took time for me to build this much trust in myself. And I understand some people might not be there yet, and you need to allow yourself time to build that trust in yourself. Hence, you don't have to quit your job right now. Just the time that you spend watching Netflix, the time that you spend watching YouTube videos, the time that you spend leisurely, use at least 1 or 2 hours of that a day and just look into creating a business. Look into bettering yourself in the sense of what you can provide to the world that you can get money for, right? Because even if you do just that, you'll realize as weeks go by, months go by, you'll be slowly getting to a point where you're less dependent on your job because you'll have a lot of money coming in from other sources as well. And this was true for me. I got into business and, after a lot of failures, I had my big success. And nowadays, it's sort of like money's just attracted to me. It just keeps coming to me even though I'm not looking for it. Whether it's from crypto, whether it's from other endeavors, I'm now at a point where I think I've set up my life in such a way, I've set up my systems in such a way that money just favors me. And this isn't some, oh, I'm unique or, oh, I have a special power that attracts money. No, it's just over the years, I realized that there's a way that we as software engineers, we have an overwhelming advantage, and there's a way we can position ourselves to really take as much advantage of the current world as possible. Because I think there's nobody else that's a better fit to take advantage of all the money and all the opportunities that we have currently than us software engineers. And you can already see that with the content game. You can see that with the way tech is advancing. We'll have AI now, and soon you'll start hearing news about quantum computing as well. But nevertheless, we're at a point now where software engineers are going to dictate pretty much the future, whether through progression of AI itself or through other iterations and through other endeavors. That's why you see most entrepreneurs, and even most, why am I talking about entrepreneurship? Just look at the Fortune 500. Most CEOs of those companies are software engineers. They have a tech background. Most even co-founders and founders have a tech background. So that should already tell you something about specifically a software engineer and their innate skill set. Some people just look at programming as one thing, but I keep telling them programming is not one skill. Don't be afraid to go into other businesses. Don't be afraid to look into other directions, because programming itself isn't one skill. Programming is a combination of multiple skills, and it just so happens that you type on a keyboard to, and you use a specific language to express the variation and the combination of those skills, but it's not just one skill. So that's pretty much all I wanted to really talk about and mention here. But if you want to make your $1 million, your first $1 million, or how much money you want to make, I'm telling you, look into creating a business. Look into getting into entrepreneurship. Even if you don't consider yourself to be an entrepreneur or the business type, look into doing something where you're dependent on yourself and not on anybody else. No boss or anything, because it's just going to make things better for you in the long term. You'll have more accountability, and the lives of you and your family isn't going to be in somebody else's hands, literally, right? You'll be able actually to do everything with your own hands and with your own power. So with that out of the way, I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comments. And as always, stay tuned. More videos will be coming pretty much every single Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.